Advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday morning, this spring morning. We got a big show planned for you. You know I love Wednesdays. We have Dr. Doreen Grandpichet here with us and she's going to be answering your questions in just a couple of minutes live here on the show. And then in our second hour, Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will join me. And we have a very special guest that will join us via the phone, Shiloh Levine, one of the directors and producers of the documentary Trace Amounts, will also be with us a little bit later on today. Big, exciting show today. But we always like to remind you at the start of the show that this entire adventure is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate with us. We'd like to hear your thoughts, your feelings, your concern, and most importantly, your questions. So Kelby is going to show you some of the different ways that you can watch the show and some of the different ways that you can interact with us. While he's doing that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Please make sure when you go to that site, and I hope that you will go there, that you sign up for our free email list. When you do that, you will get our free monthly newsletter. And now Kelby has a wonderful viewer's guide that he sends out on Mondays to let you know what's happening, who's going to be on, when they're going to be on, what our topics are for the week, let you know some of the things that happened last week that maybe if you missed that you'll want to catch up on. And the other thing that that list does is that when we have a very special guest that's going to be in the studio, we let only the people on the email list know ahead of time what's happening. So if you're on that list, stay tuned a little bit later on because you may see some information about a show that's happening next week. We will keep you posted on that, but we hope that you will participate. Now, when you also go to autism-live.com, you can click on the little triangle that's on the computer screen to watch the live show or the most recently recorded live show. But to the side of that is something we call the live feature. It's a series of white boxes. If you'll put your cursor in the box that says your question, start typing, hit enter, it will show up here on my screen. And in that way, you can interact with our experts and ask the questions that you have on your mind. It's a wonderful thing. It's totally free. You don't have to log in. There is no username. There's no password. It's just instant gratification. Don't we love that? Keep in mind, though, that because we don't know who you are, if you write to us and say, I'd really love to hear back about this, we have no way of getting in touch with you. If there's something specifically you want to hear back from us about, please make sure that you include some sort of information that's contact related. We will not share that with the audience at large. All right? It is time now for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen and welcome Dr. Doreen Grandpichet.
Good morning.
So thrilled to have you here this morning.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here. We enjoy this hour that we get to spend with you as we're gearing up. Do you feel the excitement happening as we get to April 1st and to April 2nd?
I'm actually
palpable.
still feeling the excitement happening as we move headquarters.
Yes, if people
Our headquarters are moving this Friday.
That's right. And if people could see, the behind the scenes of what's happening
the chaos.
here.
Yeah,
Well, that's a word. Yes, that's a word that, chaos. I think that disarray, I think, was the word that I was using for our guests that are coming this week. I said, please be aware that we're in a little bit of disarray as we pack.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive. It's 160 people, and over 10 years we've been in this building, so it's they're doing really well. I mean, it's much better organized than I thought. I'm just worried because I haven't done anything yet.
Well, I always say it's interesting to watch a bunch of behaviorists plan and do things.
Yes.
Because it's so different than anybody else in the world. To watch a
Highly
bunch
organized.
to watch a bunch of behaviorists plan to move that many people, it's a little fascinating. We should have made a behind-the-scenes documentary about it. But it is a little fascinating and very exciting at the same time. We've mentioned to folks on the show that very soon we're going to be coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, which will be quite the thrill. Well, we're going to keep you posted about all of that. But in the meantime, Dr. Grant-Pichet is here to answer your questions. We do like to remind you at the start of the show that she is a wonderful, brilliant expert in the field of autism and a visionary in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for more than 3 decades and has truly helped so many families and individuals on the autism spectrum, from very early childhood up through adulthood. I can't imagine anybody that we could get that would be more of an expert in the field of autism. I don't think that exists. But having said that, Dr. Grant-Pichet in this format still is not able to give you individual specific advice. In fact, no one could. So we ask you to remember that. It would be a disservice to think that anyone could address an individual's complete needs in this format, but she is so good at helping us to get on a path of getting to more answers, and we appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
So, should we jump right in?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Doreen. My almost 5-year-old saw a developmental pediatrician Friday for the first time since he received his diagnosis at age 3. He has a mix between inattentive and hyperactive side, but mainly more inattentive. He has problems organizing himself and low frustration levels. After a series of questions and observations, he suspects he has ADHD. He is receiving 23 hours of ABA plus language therapy and OT. The doctor still has some questionnaires for teachers, but I don't want to do meds, even though the doctor said that this could keep him from meeting his full potential. I've seen improvements with the ABA, but he is still very inconsistent with his behaviors. Focused one day and talking functionally, and then he goes days with repetitive, non-functional communication. What other suggestions can you give me to help my son?
There's a huge amount of overlap that occurs with kids with ADHD. As you started saying, inattentive, hyperactive type, and I was like, we're talking about ADHD here. Yeah. So there, especially the inattention issue is, of course, a big part of autism as well, or the spectrum of autism. And the last year was, with the new DSM, is the first time that we are allowed to diagnose both simultaneously. Up to last year, if you had an ASD, you should not diagnose with ADHD. There was no, you would go with the more severe. But in any case, at this point, assuming that your child has, and that I'm not big into labels, I don't care, it's just a description of symptoms. Assuming that your child does have some inattention, which could be due to their ASD or due to their ADHD or whatever it is, why not try some medication? My perspective is there's nothing, ADHD in particular, the theory at least is that biochemistry is different, that our brain functioning is quite different, and that is what is making it so hard to pay attention. Now, I don't know if you know individuals who don't have autism, who have ADHD. The truth is they are on a different level of speed. Like, they are completely in a different speed of functioning, and that is usually what leads to their inattention. So I know that people are very worried and cautious about putting their children on long-term medications, but I would suggest that it's worth a try, especially because the medications for ADHD tend to have an effect very fast. They're not like other, anxiety or depression medications where you have to have the child on there for 3 weeks. You actually should be able to see a change within a few days. So why not try? Try at the lowest dose, or titrate up a little bit and see how your child does. If you see that they're doing extremely well, all you're doing is really assisting them in learning faster, and I'm all for that. So, and again, if you have a really strong belief that you don't want to try anything of that nature, then just keep up with the ABA, because the ABA does work for all children, including children with ADHD. It's just if they have issues with hyperactivity or inattention, it just is a little bit slower process.
And what do you think about the fact that he's receiving 23 hours? He's 5.
Why not more? Why is he not receiving more? The truth is that when the original study was done to say 40 hours, and then I'll keep repeating this because I think it's pretty important. It was a random number that we came up with, 40 hours. The concept was the equivalent of full time. It could have been 50 hours. It could have been 60 hours, because we are awake. The idea was that we want to cover the child for all waking hours. And since parents were working 40 hours, then those 40 hours should be provided by another person, a therapist. And then the parents could subsidize that with additional time that they spend with their child. So really the idea was all waking hours. And I believe that Lovas would have even had various articles where he said that. You should have ABA with your child for every hour that he's awake. So, and that is obviously the most effective. In cases where there is no, let's say, limit on the funds, I have done 60 hours with children. So, and it is, of course, much more effective. The more hours, the more effective. We've published on this numerous times. So keep that in mind, that 40 hours is not the upper limit. There is no upper limit. The upper limit is as many hours as your child is awake. Now the lower limit, so there wasn't for a long time, there wasn't any kind of study. In fact, there still isn't a study that contrasts 40 to 25 hours. The study that was done originally contrasted 40 to 10 hours. And showed that 10 hours a week is not effective as 40 hours a week. We know that.
Okay.
So then where did the 25 come from? Was that a bunch of other research showed that sometimes some kids who do 25 hours will do as well as the kids who are doing 40 hours. So it sort of broadened that group. But this was only, it was one study that was done on a group design, and another study that just looked at 25-hour kids and said, yeah, it's pretty effective. They're learning pretty fast. So the truth is that if you doubled that, they'd be learning faster. So, and when we say 25, then people start to think, well, 23 is close enough. You're actually doing a little bit less than what's already not enough, in my mind.
Yeah.
So I think you should just try to increase your hours as well. I mean, 5 is the year where we have so much learning going on. Oh my gosh, there's, kindergarten stuff is coming in, and it's pretty advanced interaction at that age with other children. 5-year-olds are really advanced.
Yeah.
So I would double it up. I would go as high as I could with hours, because I think that'll really help as well. Thanks for bringing that up, Shannon.
And the other thing I want to address is diet.
Yes,
in
of
terms
course.
of with ADHD,
Thank you.
there are lots of different ideas at this moment in time. There have been a couple of studies that have suggested that perhaps an organic diet
Yep.
can reduce some of the symptoms that can accompany ADHD. That's something we just talked with Dr. Copeland about last week. That if you wanted to watch that show, you could look at that specifically. And
Yeah.
even with some kids, artificial colors and very specific colors is what I'm hearing from parents, that one child will react, because I'm struck by her comment that some days he's more there and some days he's not.
Yeah, and that does not sound like something like ADHD is pretty consistently across the board. So food or food additives or such could very much be influencing the child's behavior. You're absolutely right. From my understanding, the number one color that our kids react to is red, red food dye. And so if we have, try to avoid, there's a number of things. There are too many for us to list here, but obviously any kind of sugar and food additives or colorings, and just trying to use more natural and organic foods those types of things do affect the child's activity level for sure. And then there's so much to discuss on this level. I mean, sometimes when children have yeast going on, they have this sort of spaciness, which seems like distractibility or looks like inattention in some ways. And so that's another factor. And I agree with you, Shannon. I think what we eat is a major factor in how we feel the next day. So you really should consult with a nutritionist perhaps or a dietitian and take a look at what are the things that will benefit your child.
Or even, maybe keeping a food diary on something like skills where you're mapping what the behavior is like so that you can look at it side by side.
Absolutely.
That if you notice that when you feed your child this particular thing, you see a spike in the behavior.
Right. I mean,
could be interesting.
That's the fantastic thing about writing down everything that our children eat. It's pretty amazing. You always find patterns. Yeah. And if you do keep track of it for maybe 2 weeks or so, and then just do a little rating on each page as well in terms of the activity level that day, every day, right? And just 1 to 5, high activity or low activity. Inattention, do another one for inattention. And then you look and see, okay, these are the bad days, and what do we have in common in terms of food? So that's pretty important. But great ideas.
But do take a look at the organic thing. And we did a segment last week on how to be organic on a dime, how to be wise organic, only choosing things that were really essential to get organic, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, because studies have shown that good scientific studies that the amount of pesticide that goes into a child's system is directly related to how hyperactive they're acting. So
absolutely, and not just pesticides. I mean, I think we need to. I remember back in, gosh, this would have been like the early 90s, like maybe mid 90s. I had a family who, and this was really interesting. If you think about it, I now can look back at 2 sets of very interesting things. I don't think a lot has been published on this yet, but I had a family who whose child was diagnosed, and then we had the neighbor across the street was diagnosed, and then another child in the same building was diagnosed. And we were treating these kids, and we were like, this is kind of weird that they're all in one little area, and it was maybe even more than 3. And of course, we found out that there had been major spraying of the building, insecticides.
Wow.
And I think either one of the children was an infant, the other one, the mom was pregnant or something like that at that time. So that's something to look into. Another cluster of children that we had many years ago in one region, we could only relate to closeness to these incredible, very, very detailed group of wires, cables that were throwing off electromagnetic fields pretty intensely because they were right under a radio station or something.
Wow.
So I think that we don't realize how many toxins we are exposed to in the world, and it is important to try to keep our kids safe from that as much as possible.
Okay, so you've got a bunch of different options to look at, but certainly upping that 23 of ABA
should help.
I think is absolutely a thing to wish for and fight for. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with more questions for Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet after these messages.
Hi, this is Lisa Ackerman. Talk of Facts. One of the questions we hear all the time, how do I know if a treatment is working? If my child has a negative response or looks like a negative response? Well, there's 2 things you should look for. All medical interventions need to have clear evaluation guidelines with your physician. You should talk to your doctor ahead of time. If there's a negative response, should you stop, or does the negative response mean that treatment's working? Let me give you a really solid example. Almost every child living with autism at one point in time will have a yeast overgrowth. And yeast is extremely common in children with gut and gastrointestinal issues. And when you're not pooping on a regular basis, yeast and other bacteria tend to build up in your gut. Once you treat yeast, often you will have a negative response. What's really important for families to understand in those clear evaluation guidelines with your doctor, they should tell you, hey, your kid may be cranky for a few days. following the treatments. There are different things you can do to work with your doctor to lessen that cranky period. But the bottom line is, if you don't have clear evaluation guidelines with your physician, you don't know if that treatment is a stop. You have a negative response, stop, which that should be clear with your doctor, versus a negative response of, that means the treatment's working. So my favorite thing when we talk to families that are about to go through yeast treatments with their kid after extensive evaluation and labs is, your kid's gonna be a jerk, but oh my God, it's gonna be great in a few days, followed by beautiful behavior. So now you know. We'll be back with another Talk of Fact real soon. Take care.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm all confused today. We're doing Ask Dr. Doreen right now because Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is sitting here with me. Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy is a little bit later.
Next.
But I don't know whether I'm coming or going today. We've had such an exciting day.
It's one of those days.
It is one of those days. But I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Thank
You're
you.
answering our viewers' questions, and nothing could be more exciting than that. So, going on, we've got some questions about girls. The first one about an adult daughter. She says, the mom says, hello, I'm struggling to motivate my adult daughter. She can be very lazy. She says she wants to make better choices and participate more in activities, but she's all talk. Most days she refuses to go anywhere. How can I help her do more with her life? And thank you.
Well, I mean, and I love the questions because they always remind me of things that I haven't done. But you always you want to change your behavior. You definitely want to start with identifying the antecedents and consequences to the behavior, and then manipulating those to change the behavior. Very simple. So, what are and mostly we look at consequences, but you can certainly look at antecedents. For instance, you would like your daughter to do something, I don't know, some additional physical activity perhaps. And so that's the behavior that you'd like to increase, and you have to look and see what are some things that are reinforcers for her. What is a meaningful reinforcer for your daughter? These are not going to be the same things that are reinforcing to you. We each have different reinforcers in our lives. So first thing is to identify the things that are reinforcing to her, and then make access to those things contingent upon the additional behavior, the additional action or activity that you'd like to see. But be very clear on, what is her activity level now and exactly what you would like to increase. Like, be very clear so that you have an objective measurement of what it is you're trying to improve and what behavior change you're looking for, and make it very easy to accomplish initially, and pile on the reinforcer. And then gradually over time, what you do is you increase the contingency. So you increase the required behavior, and you gradually reduce the overtness of the reinforcer so that it mimics more natural life. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. I'm just marveling at how
basic it is, right?
Well, but also how different everyone is on the spectrum, right? We acknowledge that everyone on the spectrum is different, but I also look at it and realize how different we are as parents. That on the flip side of this, we had a young adult daughter who had been writing into us a couple of years ago and said, what do I do? My mom doesn't want me to do anything. I'm not allowed to boil water. I'm not allowed to.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and now that young woman who took your advice started doing college at home online, and now she's in her first semester on campus taking classes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. I loved that one. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, but how difficult it was for her mom to let her have a bigger life. And here's a mom who would like her daughter to have a bigger life. It's just, it's always very interesting what the different circumstances are, and everyone's different. And I love that this mom wants more for her daughter than her daughter currently thinks is possible. But I hope that we'll get to the same point where we'll hear back from this mom in a couple of years and say, and now my daughter is going and doing this, and I'm so proud of her. It can happen. Absolutely. And I think the hardest thing is identifying those motivating factors. You think to yourself that she's not motivated by anything, but believe me, everybody's motivated by something. Yeah. It could be something unhealthy, which isn't good, and you want to search for more healthy motivators.
But regardless, everyone has reinforcers, so you have to just find out what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Like to go on to a question about an almost 5-year-old. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. I have a question. My soon-to-be 5-year-old son grinds his teeth some days, very minimal, and on other days it goes on the whole day. His OT told me to try to give him a chewy stick every time he starts grinding his teeth. And also, he's scripting a lot. He has tons of language and 5 to 6 word sentences. Sometimes he uses his scripting appropriately, but most of the time is not. He's considered high functioning and a really smart little boy, but the scripting is getting stronger. At school, they are teaching him appropriate language to say, and then they will implement a plan where they will take something away when he starts scripting and reinforce him when he's not, or when he uses language appropriately. What do you think about this, Dr. Doreen? And thanks so much.
So a couple of different things. So we're discussing, first of all, scripting, and then we're discussing the teeth grinding. And it doesn't sound like you have an ABA program at home. It sounds like there's some ABA occurring at school. To answer your question sort of in reverse, sure, what they're doing at school is fine. I mean, it works. They're reinforcing a positive behavior, and they're not reinforcing, or they're removing reinforcements for a negative behavior. But scripting, I found, is usually if the child's, I guess the intent is to communicate. And a lot of times our kids don't know how to interact, and they'll take a script from something they've heard and they'll repeat it to someone because they think they're talking. When I was a kid, my mom says I used to sit and just scribble for hours because I thought I'm writing. And it's basically the same thing. You're scripting and you think speaking is the same as communicating, right? So if they're going to reduce the scripting by removing a reinforcer when it occurs, it would be very important to start to replace it with something appropriate. So it kind of matters that someone should be teaching appropriate language. In fact, scripting generally tends to go away when we are teaching appropriate speech anyway. So I highly recommend, and if this is a child who has, scripting is usually, by the way, something more high functioning in nature anyway. That means your child already has some language and some speech, and so that's a great sign. But I do think that you should be doing a pretty intensive ABA program at home to increase the appropriate speech, which will automatically eliminate the scripting. But aside from the scripting, I mean, you want to teach your child language and appropriate language and communication, and a child who scripts is capable of having typical language and communication. So please give your child a lot of ABA at home, like really seek that out and get that going, because that is integral and very crucial for a child like this. As for the teeth grinding, that could be a number of different things. It could be a sensory type of thing. It could be just a habit that has formed. It could also be a sensory in a way that you haven't thought of. For instance, when you teeth grind, your hearing changes. You hear things differently. So I would recommend trying to find out under what circumstances your child is actually teeth grinding, because it's unusual. Grinding teeth is usually just regular grinding of teeth usually occurs in our sleep. It actually occurs overnight. It's not something that we do awake. So if your child's doing it awake, I'm wondering what is going on sensory-wise in the mouth. If it is a sensory, let's say, lack of sort of, kids who have things like apraxia, for instance, the muscle tone in your tongue is not strong enough. So in that case, they might be doing some jaw movements or those types of things. Yes, it would benefit to have them bite on something that's a chewy toy if we're trying to increase the sensation in the mouth. Only if we're trying to increase the sensation in the mouth. Because replacing it with biting on something chewy is you're not necessarily replacing it with something functional, adaptive, okay in the environment, because we don't want your child pulling out a chewy toy and doing that whenever they feel like. So the other question I have is, is this just sort of like a tick? Like, has it become a habit, in which case you just start replacing the habit with something more important, more appropriate, more socially appropriate, like chewing gum? So you kind of need to have an FBA done here, a functional assessment of some type, to determine what is the function of the teeth grinding. Why is your child grinding teeth? That becomes critical to how we deal with it. The first thing I would do is just very simply try to replace it with something that is more adaptive, more normal, which is chewing gum, for instance. But you also don't want to do that while they're, well, no, in school they're dealing with scripting, so that's fine. And the other issue is, is school doing anything about the teeth grinding? If it's occurring during the day, I would imagine they have some sort of intervention. You want to make sure you find out what that is, because you don't want two different interventions running in two different settings.
Okay, good point. And then do write us back and let us know
Yes,
what
please
happened.
let us know.
We'd love to hear. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with the other question about a teenage girl being very argumentative.
Okay.
I can't wait to hear about this. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Just go like this. Can you see me? Puedes mirarme aquí? Okay. Hi, I'm Rebecca Ishida. Say hi, Ethan. Hi. My son was diagnosed with autism in November 2004. With Ethan, almost immediately, we noticed things that were troublesome, that he just didn't sleep. He would vomit in the crib. There were a lot of sensory issues.
Then he'd have like 20 of the trains lined up, and if you came in and took one train out, just meltdown completely.
Guttural instinct is to think that there's nothing wrong. Who wants to look at their child and go, there's something wrong with that child? You don't. You always want to see the best in your child.
Will my kid be able to go to school? Will he interact with his peers? Will he be able to have a healthy relationship? Will he get married? I really thought that autism was like a death sentence. A lot of hope was given to me through CARD. This was my third agency, and the best agency we had. And there was no way in the world I was going to give up CARD because of the gains I saw Ethan was having.
You did it!
And I remember when Doreen saw us for the evaluation, she says, but by the time he's 6, he will be recovered. And that's exactly what happened.
I'll fix that.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grandpichet, and she is answering your questions live. We're still taking questions if you'd like to write in on our live feature, which is on autism-live.com. Okay, I promised another question about a teenage daughter. Somebody writes in and says, my teenage daughter is very argumentative and talks back to me a lot. How can I change or stop this behavior? And she says, thank you, with an exclamation point. And actually, I don't know that it's a mom. It could be a dad.
Right, but so here's a very, I guess, my question to you, which hopefully would act as an answer for you. Argument involves two sides, right? So don't argue. Walk away when she starts becoming argumentative. Just walk away, discontinue the discourse.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's a very simple procedure to stop a discussion. The issue then becomes, does she follow through on whatever you requested, which is a completely different thing. And that has to do with rewarding appropriately what you're asking her to do. But arguing, you can stop arguing by just not arguing. Walk away.
It's interesting. I'm, putting that through my filter of, kind of stuff that going on with Jem, who's about to be 12, and all of a sudden has turned into a man. The voice has dropped, and he's tall.
Oh my gosh!
I think he's a hair taller than me, and He's got a little bit of fuzz on the lip, and it's freaking me out completely, right?
Totally.
And I remember when he was 3 and saying, I need help, I need to get ABA right now, because when he's 15, I'm not going to be able to physically, get him to do something. So I have to have compliance before that. And I think I really overshot, because I think we're
He's
there now.
very,
He's
very-
11, and I'm not going to be able to physically. But you know what that's done for me is it's forced me to have to stop arguing. There are times where I like to discuss things. I have the wop feature where he'll say something and I go, you don't need to talk to me that way. I'm a good person and I feed you wop, right? It does no good whatsoever. And I notice that a lot of times when I want him to do something, he'll start, that back at me about, I'm doing this or whatever. And I just the other day instituted a thing with him where I just don't have time right now to deal with that. I mean, quite honestly, I just don't have time right now. And so I said to him, I need you to do something, and he didn't do it. And then I reminded him like 30 seconds later, I said, you haven't responded to my request. I just want you to know that I noticed that. And I walked away. And he started packing, because he was so afraid, oh my gosh, somewhere down the line she's going to get upset. He started packing everything up. I've done it 3 times now, and he just is Johnny on it. And it's so much less energy to just say to him, I want you to know, I request you to do this. I've noticed that you're not doing it. And then he gets it together.
Right, and sometimes it's even, and that's a very good point, right? Because arguing is usually a process by which we delay doing something. So when someone says do something and the person starts arguing with you, it's a delay tactic.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So not allowing the arguing, just walking away is a very effective thing. Now, what's actually, I always, when I have these situations with my kids, it's funny, I always try to figure out how can I do the things differently. And in a situation like that, I think our instruction is maybe not clear.
Okay.
Because maybe what we're saying is, I'd like you to do something, and we're not putting a time frame on it.
Right.
Like maybe what you really want to say is, I'd like you to do something in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to come back and remind, like you could just say, it's now 4 minutes, it's now 3 minutes.
Right.
Like the real thing for you, I mean, and maybe the individual doesn't realize that when you say, I want you to do something, you mean right now.
Right.
They think they can do it later.
Yeah. Well, and even when you said, I noticed the other day that I said something to him, I said, would you like to do this? And he said no. And I thought, well, that's really ridiculous and I then said to him, I said, Mom made a word mistake. You need to go do this. I framed it as a question when there wasn't really a choice in this. I need you to go do this. I need to be more specific with my language.
Well, and you need to start transferring, yes, you need to be more specific with your language, but you also need to start transferring the thought process over to him.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those things that as parents we tend not to do, and especially as parents of children who have been on the spectrum, we tend to think for them. You need to start having him think it through. In other words, if he says no, then sit down and take the time to say, okay, what will happen if you don't do it? Because the person needs to, and ultimately it's their decision still, but they need to be the one that say, okay, I don't do it, this happens, and then that happens, and oh yeah, I don't want that third outcome, so I better do it. You know what I mean?
Fascinating. I learned so much here. I do. No, because I see, I know that I need to be stepping back and letting him motor him and make mistakes. I need to let him make mistakes and motor through things. And I need to focus on myself and how I'm reacting to things. So that if my son, because we're talking about a girl here who's argumentative, and I have seen my son participate in that recently. That's how we got off track here. But that I really don't have that much control over what he does. I have infinite control over what I do.
Absolutely.
And taking that empowerment and doing something with it instead of being frustrated and taking my frustration hose and sticking it on his face.
Don't ever communicate. I mean, one of the things I've learned from my own children is that it's always best not to communicate when you're frustrated.
Yeah.
But to step away from it and think why am I frustrated? What is this lighting up in me?
Yeah.
And then to go back, or why are they arguing? I mean, it's one of the things I do sometimes with my kids is I'll say, so right now you're arguing with me. What is a different way to say whatever it is you're intending? Because I'm not getting it. Like, what's the intention of this argument? Be clearer with me.
Yeah.
And it makes them think. It makes them more aware of their own stuff. And that, I think, is the biggest gift you can give to anyone, is just making them more aware of themselves and their own intentions and their own feelings about things, and you know, that's a huge gift.
That empowers them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
empowers
Through
us,
life,
too.
yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Okay, write back to us and let us know what ends up happening. Okay. Next question here. Hi, ladies. My son, 4.5, been with CARD 40 hours, is attending a main preschool 15 hours, is on the GAPS diet, sleeps great, he is doing good, he reads and has a lot of vocabulary. Still can't answer a simple question. Lately, he has been writing letters with his fingers on countertops, on the floor, in the air, etc. Even at school, he gets sand, puts it on the concrete, and starts to write. Seriously. What can I tell my team and myself to do? I got on your calendar and you met my kids. Is this a good sign? Please help. Also, his skills account frightens me. As much as he is learning, he is still low on the bar graphs. Should I be worried? Okay, and they gave information about which office they're in so that I can tell you if you need to know who it is, but I'm not going to share that.
I'm not sure.
I can write you right now.
Yeah. Well, did they give any information about how long? And the child is 4?
4.5.
Right. So first of all, 4.5, you should not be worried. He seems to be doing well from what you're telling me. He's learning things, and you have a full program, and he's in a mainstream classroom, which is in itself a very good sign. The fact that he's not answering simple questions is, they should be working now on WH questions in his program. That's a lesson, and that lesson should prompt him to respond to questions and ask questions as well. And given that he is showing an interest for letters, that's a good thing. It seems like a bad thing, but actually you can turn it into a good thing. So we panic when our kids do these sort of rote repetitive behaviors because we think like, oh, self-stimulation, what am I going to do with this? But, an interest in letters is actually a useful self-stimulatory behavior. It often indicates hyperlexia and that the child is very good with letters. And that's a wonderful thing because you can actually significantly speed up learning by having the child read. So, for instance, you would like the child to answer a question. Let's say, what did you do in school today? That might be more advanced than where he's at, I don't know, but any question, like, what did you eat? Whatever. And you would write the answer and actually just flash the answer to the child. And it seems very rote initially, but it doesn't matter because you can teach maybe 10 different answers and they would be relevant to that day. For instance, it actually is whatever he ate. And that will give him the idea of what it is you're expecting, and then you can fade away the visual prompt. But children who are readers, they learn exponentially faster because you have this ability to prompt them with words. So, and they learn from the words around them, from books. Please allow him to read, encourage him. And there's nothing wrong with it. Yes, I know we will continue to redirect when he's like writing in the sand or air writing or whatever it is, because that in itself is not appropriate. But your staff should be redirecting it to writing, actually, or doing things like crossword puzzles or reading books or whatever it is, depending on his level, or matching word to picture. I mean, there's a lot you can do with words. So I wouldn't panic or worry. I don't know when I've seen your child. If I do have the information of who your supervisor is, I will get our clinical director, Evelyn Kong, to take a look at your program and to make sure that you're on the right path. And I think that's the best step. And you can always ask your supervisor to set up a consult with our clinical director. This is what Evelyn does all day long. She consults on all the cases.
And what I remember about this period of time as a parent is that I was panicked the entire time.
Of course.
I was panicked the entire time.
Of course.
Are we going to get there? Don't we need to be? What page do we need to be on?
Right.
What's happening? Why aren't we further? I
know,
think I
and
drove
I
our
don't blame
team
you.
crazy because I couldn't see where we were going to go or where we were going to get. And I wanted everybody to write me a written guarantee. I kept saying I wished for a crystal ball. If I could just look into the future, look through the crystal ball and see that we were going to be okay, then I could calm down. But nobody could give that to me because that doesn't exist. That's not realistic. But here is what I have to say to you is that you're going where you're going and you're going to get there no matter what, no matter how much you worry.
It's true.
And
it's true.
if you get there, if you look at the two different scenarios about, okay, we're going to get to the exact same place, or potentially if I put the worry down, if I could get even 5 steps further in 5 years, would it be worth it to put the worry down? Just for your kids' sake. But how about for you? If you sit down for a couple of minutes and think, all right, I'm going to continue to worry at this pace, and in 5 years, we're going to be at this space, but what does my life look like?
Right.
Or we're going to be at that space, and I decided not to worry and to just get a little bit more active. It might be that you're already doing everything you can think of, but if you could spend 10 more minutes a day doing something with your child that you were currently spending worrying, what would that do over 5 years?
It's true.
Just for your kid, but then let's talk about how different you will be. If I could do anything over again, I would go back and give myself a worryectomy.
Yeah, so, and that's a great position and a great option, and I love that because I think so many parents need to hear that, that you should really try to not worry about these things.
It's hard though.
It's extremely hard, and I'm gonna suggest a different perspective altogether as well, and you can choose. So one thing is, every time you worry about something, write it down and give it to your supervisor. Just hand it off to someone, because it is their job to worry. That's their job. They should be the one worrying. Your job is to hand your worries over to them. Okay, now that's impossible because you're a mom or dad, and we worry for our kids much more than a third person would. But hand it all over, and hand it over in writing. Okay, because then they feel an obligation to handle whatever you gave them. That thing that you gave them is now their obligation. The second thing I want you to do is this. Pick one day in the week where you don't worry. Just pick one day or 1 hour every day. Just say from 10 to 11, I'm not allowed to think about this. Or from 1 to 2, I'm not allowed to think about whatever. Pick an hour, or just say today's Thursday. On every Thursday or to every Wednesday, I'm not gonna worry. Okay, and then worry the rest of the time because you're not gonna stop it. Just give yourself a very specific period of time not to worry. But I feel like it's so hard as a parent, and I have 3 kids. And I worry about everything, and then I get really, really tired, and I think, gosh, I wish, I wouldn't worry. And it doesn't matter what age they are, I used to worry about them when they were newborns, then you're worrying about different things, and I worry about them now that they're in college. You worry about different things, so it doesn't matter, you're constantly worrying. Yeah. But the thing is, at some point, you just have to trust the universe, and at some point, you just have to, go with what's in your child's way. You are definitely doing more, which is watching our show, for instance. You've already come to see me, it sounds like. You're really on top of this case, of your child's case, and your clinical involvement is great. So I would suggest that you write down your stuff and hand it to your supervisor. Become friends with Evelyn Kung, who is a fantastic clinical director. Email her all of your thoughts, your concerns, whatever it is. Just hand it over to someone else. You have a lot of people at CARD who care, so please keep communicating with them. And Shannon, I'd love to know which office it is.
Okay, I will make sure that you know.
Thank you.
Hello, my 7-year-old is high functioning and verbal. She can be calm one moment and suddenly get angry if we don't understand her. Could be that we didn't hear her or pronunciation. Sometimes the sudden anger is from not getting the answer she expects, even if it's made up bedtime story. Is this flexibility? And thank you.
No, this is just frustration. I mean, it's really simple. I always say that behavior, challenging behavior, is just a way to communicate. And so she's just frustrated for whatever reason it may be. And in the past, it has gotten your attention when she becomes angry or expresses herself loudly or tantrums or whatever it is. I don't remember their exact wording. But so it has been an effective tool for her. It has been an effective mode of communication. My recommendation is obviously you need to not respond when she raises her voice or when she tantrums or, well, what did they say exactly was the way that the issue?
She can be calm one moment, suddenly gets angry if we don't understand her.
Or
Could be that we didn't hear her
so
pronunciation.
I don't know how she expresses that anger, but when she does express anger, the best thing you can do is to walk away. And next time, what you need to do is try to attend to her very much every time she's talking normally, because you want to increase normal talking and decrease anger. With my child, my youngest, who's a teenager, if she says something to me in a way that just sounds very teenagery, I'll just simply walk away. Right. I'll pretend like I didn't hear it.
And what's important,
it can escalate. I don't care.
You don't say to her, "I'm walking away from you right now."
No, I'll just walk away.
Which is what I want to do. You just turn it. It's like the lights have gone off and you walk away.
Yeah,
that's hard.
It is hard, and sometimes I'll actually give her a specific look before I walk away, because I'd like her to learn that the look, I'm classically conditioning the look to the exit, because I'd like her to know that when she gets that look, she needs to cut it out. Otherwise, the next thing that's coming is the exit.
Okay.
So, and I don't communicate. She can do whatever she wants, and I won't communicate. And then literally 5 minutes later, when the whole thing is over, I act like it didn't happen. I will go back in and say, honey, do you want something for a snack? Or it did not happen. So that's extinction. Extinction is the behavior did not happen. Not that you go and have a discussion about it.
Right.
And so that's pretty important, that you ignore the behavior, but you reward the good behavior. So if your child communicates in a positive way, in a normal way, you need to reward that. You need to pay attention to that. And you know, it is difficult sometimes if our kids, if you think she's not hearing it, or you're not hearing what she said, I'm not sure. Figure out what it is that's causing the anger. Sometimes it'll be you simply can't have something, and that's fine. I mean, that's how life is.
Yeah.
But make sure you do not give in. See, we don't realize how much. I was just talking to my husband yesterday, and he was upset about someone's reaction. Someone was dealing with him and was giving him guilt. Okay, and I said, you've nothing to be guilty about. And he said, yeah, but it makes me feel guilty, and I know that this is going to happen again and stuff. And I said, if this happens, it's only because you give in. They do this behavior, you feel guilty, and then you give in. So what you've done is you've reinforced that person for making you feel guilty, and they'll keep doing it because it's effective for them. So everything we do, we are bringing it about in our environment. It's always really important to think of how we interact and how we reinforce others, how we can just walk away from behaviors that we don't really want in our lives.
I love to look at words and what they mean and look at the root of the word. And a couple of years ago, I was listening to a program where they talked about the word to bait. That the root of the word comes from to offer. And that when someone baits you, they're making an offer, and you choose to accept it or you choose not to accept it.
Very interesting.
Isn't that? Because it puts it in a whole other light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is absolutely up to you whether you are baited or not.
Yeah, it's an offer.
Take the bait or don't.
No, thank you. I don't want that.
That's great.
All right,
I
really
love that.
quickly, because we only have like a minute left. That clock is a little bit fast.
And you know that I have to be upstairs at 11.
I do. So very quickly, I'm only going to give you 1 minute to answer this. Dr. Dr. Doreen, you have an incredible team of people who are not only experts but care about our kids.
Oh, thank you.
Are there plans to create services which could continue as our kids become adults and parents pass on? I'm counting on you to be the Wells Fargo which can deliver mail 100 years into the future. If anyone can do it, you can. If there is anything we can do to support that initiative, please share, and thank you so much. And she writes, the Wells Fargo comment Back to the Future movie. So
that's really lovely. I appreciate that. That gives me goosebumps, that email, and thank you so much. We have a really great adolescent and adult program now. I want to make sure you know about that. So what we're doing is we are trying to grow with our population as much as possible. We are truly excited about our adults program and very, very passionate about it. It's going in multiple different directions. First of all, we're offering it everywhere. We've finished training our key adult program experts at our various sites. The person who is in charge of the entire thing altogether right now is Sarah Cho, who's our director of operations, who's hugely influential at CARD and very, very passionate about this. As much as I wanted to try to get her off of this project and have her do other things, she wouldn't drop this one. So there's a few people that are incredibly passionate about our adult program. We do everything for our adults, from recreational activities to teaching them vocational skills to anything, you name it. And even for our higher functioning Asperger's type adults, we will work with them to get them in college and help them as much as we can in all different ways. So that is available. Now, hopefully, one of the dreams, and I always repeat my dreams even if I haven't been able to get them to happen. One of my dreams, and we're getting closer in some ways, I feel, but one of my dreams is to have communities that allow safe residential placement for our adults. Right now, we're starting to partner with a bunch of different people who would offer jobs to our adults. And a very good friend of mine and yours, Lubis Mara, now also is very interested in these options and working with us. And together we're trying to develop the option to have communities, farms, villages where it's safe housing. And of course, all of these other things, education, vocational training, housing, opportunities for recreation, all that sort of stuff in a safe environment. So we're heading there. I think we're maybe 3 or 4 years away from having something that's very solid, but our adult program is certainly out there and solid right now.
Wonderful. I always say you're a visionary.
Thank you so much.
And these are the visions that she has for all of us. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Thank you very much.
We hope you live forever.
And this will be our last show here at this building.
Yes. We have a very special show next week for you on the 1st of April, but this is our last live show in this particular studio. It has bittersweet memories for me.
Yes.
We should get a quick picture, but I know that you need to go. We thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
For sharing with us. As I said, I learned so much. We're going to go now to a wonderful ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism following a little boy, Jack Riley, diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Take a look. This is the A Word. When we come back, I'll be joined by Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Our very special guest today, Shiloh Levine, a filmmaker with a film that's getting a great deal of attention, Trace Amounts. You won't want to miss it. So first, here is the A Word.
There's Miss Jessica. Hello. Say hi. What do you see? What is it? What's that? Giraffe. He's getting really good at that. What's that guy? Who's this guy?
We have this one program called NVI, which is non-vocal imitation. So he basically has to imitate whatever we do. So we were working on object manipulation, and then Tuesday, I tried doing more gross motor things like clapping hands or standing or jumping, and he was able to imitate all of those. Ready? Do this! Yay! Very good! Okay, here you go. Who's hiding now? Me? Do this! fine motor action with a touch nose. Oh, yeah. How did that happen? You want more? You want more of this? More? Okay. Good asking. We'll do a couple more actions, okay? Do this. Good job. Do this. Good job. Do this. Good try. Over here. Can you try? Do this. There you go. All right. Here you go. He's been doing a lot more on his own, even just when I attempt to by just holding the object, not necessarily asking him to imitate more. Cat, that's right. He does do it on his own now, which is really cool. Good asking, buddy. Out. Line that up.
That one's up. Oh, there you go. See? How many up do you want to go?
Touch the block. God, what is it? What? Good job.
Sorry, I'm just curious.
That's okay. I'm interested too. Touch shoes. Where's the shoes? Let's go try. Okay. Let's see. You touch crab. Where's the crab? Can you touch it with your finger though? Thank you. Did you see that? What is it? Crab. See, crab. That was so funny. I didn't specify, huh? Touch block. Good job. What is it? What is this? Block. This is his receptive labels, so what I just did basically. And our supervisor had written down things that's in his environment that he might not know or that he might know the labels to, or if he's just seen it or heard the label for it, not necessarily know how to say it per se. And I just went through block, guitar, bear, plane, cat with him, and so he actually knows all of them. So I'm actually going to go through his environment just to see other things like shoes. He actually knew almost everything on here except fork, I think. Yeah. So that's actually really impressive. You amaze me every day, kiddo.
We're taking a walk. We just finished dinner, getting ready to go to bed. But part of our after dinner tradition suddenly has been to take a walk. Make sure. Say, come on, Mama. Come on, Mama. Right, Jack? And then we say, stop. Go. 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 Stop. Go. 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 So we're practicing our stops and goes. Stop. Go. Good stopping. Go. Stop. Go. Good stopping, Jack. Stop. Go. Go. Good stopping. Good job, love. Look at me. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
So thrilled to have you here today, and exciting day. Lots going on. We have a very special guest. We should say that we filmed earlier today with our special guest Shiloh Levine that we're going to show you in just a few minutes. And Nancy didn't get to be here for that because you had some other things that you need to do, and we had to change the time at the last minute. But I'm excited for you to see the interview.
Hear the interview, right?
Yes. Well, you'll see it too. I mean, you'll see me, but you'll be hearing Shiloh Levine talking about it.
And I did see the film. I was
Yes.
at the LA premiere, so I'm, after the interview, we can talk a little bit about some impressions that I had.
Absolutely. Should be a very, I'll be very interested to hear your opinion. Because I know you would have asked some other questions, and so we'll have to have them back on at some point.
And we are planning to have Eric Gladen,
yes,
who is the subject of the documentary as well as the producer. She's the director.
He's one of the directors. I guess they co-directed and co-produced.
Okay. So he is actually the subject of the film. So that'll be very interesting to have him on in the future.
Absolutely. And we want everybody to know, too, that as we gear up towards next week, next week will be the 1st of April. We just found out yesterday that we have a very exciting guest who will be with us on the April 1st show, that James Durbin is
very
well
known, of course, from American Idol.
Yes, very excited to meet him.
Yes,
I hear
on
he's
the autism spectrum, and enormously talented young man.
And has a co-diagnosis of Tourette's, which I think people, if you watch the show, you're familiar with. But I hear that he's just the sweetest young man, and of course he's a family man, a dad with 2 kids. When I told my husband that he was going to be on, my husband, started showing me pictures of him with his babies, and I hear he's just a very hands-on, sweet dad.
I'm sure he is.
Which we love hearing that.
Yeah.
I don't know, that just gives me so much hope.
He's here to talk about, with Joanne Laura, to talk about a very special event coming up with Temple Grandin.
It's called Temple Grandin and Friends.
Yes.
It's a musical event. It's happening on May 20th.
It's going to be huge.
And then also next week, we're as if that wasn't an exciting enough show, we're going to have a Reva Martin live in the studio talking about a very important task force that she is a part of to serve that underserved community.
Reva Martin from the Special Needs Network.
Yeah, so really wonderful. But starting today, big news this week as we gear up. I know there's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to hear about.
People are waiting to release some studies and big news things.
Yes, but big news in the last couple of days about IVF children.
And I've always had this hunch that women that undergo a lot of fertility treatments might have a higher likelihood for autism occurring, because it seemed like in my experience, so many moms I knew that went through IVF seemed to end up with, maybe because they had multiples, I thought, they ended up with a child with autism. And this study confirms, it was done at Columbia University, and it says children conceived through assisted reproductive technology, such as in vitro fertilization, it doesn't limit it to that. I don't know whether embryo implantation might be another, are twice as likely to have autism as those conceived without assistance. But researchers only found an association, which may be explained by multiple births and other risks, not the infertility treatment itself. So the way I see that is, it's not necessarily the drugs you take when you're undergoing, all the hormones that you have to take, because I've been through IVF, I've been through egg donation, all of that, and we ended up adopting. But it does seem to imply that the increased risk for multiples, and it says the study included nearly 6 million children from 1997 to 2007, and after taking into account factors such as a mother's education and multiple births, the increased risk was seen only for women under 35.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And I'll look forward to hearing more as we narrow it down a little bit, because we certainly have heard that when you have multiple births, you're more likely to have premature births. And we have heard that with premature births, you're more likely to have complications, including autism.
And you're more likely with early births to have immune dysregulation, which can cause maybe a higher propensity to toxic overload. I do want to say this. The lead researcher, Peter Behrman, said the risk of autism appears to be largely modifiable by restricting IVF to single embryo transfer. So not putting multiple embryos in, which increases your likelihood of having a child, because a lot of those embryos don't take. I think when I had IVF, they put in 3 embryos. And so single embryo is what they're recommending to decrease the likelihood of autism.
Sounds like that would be a lot more expensive, though.
You'll have to do it multiple times, maybe, to get pregnant. It's very complicated.
Right.
Continues to be.
So difficult, because I know there are so many families out there that are trying desperately to get pregnant, and it's a hard enough road.
Without worrying that, okay, now I have an increased risk of autism.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wanted to talk a little bit about this film. We're gonna, in just a second, we're gonna take a break, and then when we come back, we're gonna show you the video of the interview that I did this morning with Shiloh Levine, one of the directors and producers on this film, Trace Amounts. Right. But you went to the premiere.
I did. And I talked to RFK Jr. After the premiere because he led this discussion at the LA premiere, and there was a panel afterwards talking about it, and Eric and Shiloh were there. The basic synopsis of the film is that during the past 20 years, you know, the frequency of autism, as we all know, has skyrocketed, obviously, and you know, supposedly the scientific community is really not that much closer to really knowing definitive causes. So Trace Amounts is the true story of this young man, Eric Gladen's painful journey through mercury poisoning that he believes resulted from a thimerosal, is it thimerosal or thimerosal?
I believe it's thimerosal.
Thimerosal loaded tetanus shots. So he gets this tetanus shot. He starts descending into an illness that, as he starts obsessively researching, and some of the effects of this illness were the fact that he couldn't sleep, he'd be on the computer all night, he became very obsessive. He also was very sensitive to noise and sights. He had a lot of self-stimulatory behavior. He no longer was able to make eye contact with people. Everything was painful. Everything was an overload. And so as he started working on this, he realized, trying to find out what was wrong with him, he said, I've got mercury poisoning. And then he started looking at autism. Yeah. And he started looking at mercury in various vaccines, including the MMR, which it is now no longer contained in the MMR. Right. However, the movie does put a lot into the fact that mercury is in the flu vaccine.
Yes.
Currently.
All of which I talk about with Shiloh Levine. And so I think we should, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, you'll see the interview that Shiloh did with me this morning. So short break, and then Trace Amounts. Stick with us.
Hi, welcome to Camp Discovery, a free-to-play suite of fun, interactive learning games for kids 2 and up, designed by experts in autism. Camp Discovery will open your early learner to a world of new skills, shapes, numbers, colors, locations, emotions, and more. Let's get started.
Please choose a level.
Objects. First, Camp Discovery's Intelligent Preference Assessment determines your child's preferred reward for choosing correctly. Okay, got it. Let's play. Camp Discovery creates a motivating learning environment for your child by minimizing incorrect responses and maximizing successful ones.
Find the shoes.
Respond correctly and is rewarded with their favorite animations.
You did it.
Respond incorrectly, and our unique prompting system guides your child to the correct answer by making it the largest choice.
That's not it. Try again. Way to go.
Continue to answer correctly, and the size gradually reduces until the child makes the correct choice independently.
You win.
Success! Rewards motivate learning. Complete a round, and your child is rewarded with a fun mini-game. Track your child's progress with easy-to-read graphs. Multiple settings options allow you to customize Camp Discovery to your child's unique needs. All this in one single app, the Camp Discovery app, available for free on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon Store.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We have on the phone right now Shiloh Levine, and she is both a director and a producer on the film Trace Amounts, which is getting a lot of attention right now. They've got some very important events that have happened in the last week and more things that are coming up. So Shiloh, first of all, we want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you here. Let's start with, this is a documentary. The name of it is Trace Amounts. The subtitle is Autism, Mercury, and the Hidden Truth. Now, when you guys were here in Los Angeles for the premiere, one of the things that struck me that I was very intrigued by is that on your Facebook page, it says very clearly that this film is not an anti-vaccine film, and yet the one and only headline that I saw dubbed it anti-vax film. Maybe you can help our audience to clear up why that is the case. What's the truth here?
Well, the truth is that we are pro people choosing whether or not they want to get vaccines, especially in the state of the CDC right now with corruption and cover-up that's gone on that you can see in Trace Amounts. I don't think they're in a position to do things like mandate vaccines right now. So, and parents know the health of their child better than the state does. And whether or not they've seen injury from an ingredient like thimerosal, which is mercury, a mercury-based preservative. So I just think, and Eric Gladen, who is also a director on the film and producer who cannot be here today, also feels that this is about people choosing, and it's definitely not anti-vaccine. I've received all of my vaccines, and Eric did too, but he suffered an injury from one of those.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that, because that's sort of the genesis of this, that Eric was, from my understanding, a construction worker and had no dog in this fight whatsoever.
Right.
Had nothing going on in his life that had to do with autism, but he had a puncture wound and decided to go get a shot, a tetanus shot, as does most of the world at this point. And then what happened to Eric as a result of that?
So he's an engineer, but he actually happened to be at home just working on a fence, and he scraped his head on a nail, and was convinced by close people to him that he should go get a tetanus shot. So he did, and he started. He came down with what he perceived at the time as flu-like symptoms immediately. And then his symptoms progressed into severe sound issues where he could hear the whirring of a CD, a coffee pot bubbling. Everything was super loud to him. It was like the audio was just turned way up. He saw tracers. He was having all of these neurological difficulties. And that's when he started asking doctors what's going on, and they couldn't figure it out. And finally, he Googled mercury and tetanus shot and saw that it was in the tetanus shot because some of his symptoms were similar to mercury poisoning. And he started down this path of, wait a second, my tetanus shot had mercury in it. He went, he followed up. He found out there was thimerosal, which is the mercury-based preservative. And then he began to look into, well, how do I help myself? And he started doing a chelation program with Andy Cutler and started healing. And that's when his symptoms were going away through direct mercury chelation. And so he knew it was the mercury. But also through his research, he kept coming across autism and this thimerosal in the vaccines. And he was like, what is this? And why are children getting exposed to this? And that's when he just took off into researching this for a couple of years before I met him, actually. So that was the genesis. That's what sparked and that's what fueled this investigation.
And then how did you come into this project, Shiloh?
So a couple of things. I moved to LA to work in film, and in between working in film, I started substitute teaching, and I got special ed classes. And I became someone who taught children with autism on a regular basis. I had ended up with my own class. And I started, I was always reading health books, and I came across this connection between mercury and autism. And I started getting my own fillings removed, which also have, the silver fillings have mercury in them as well, more mercury than silver. And I was teaching and loving it, but I wanted to get back into film. And so I saw an ad saying I need someone to help me make a film. I'm an engineer, and the subject was autism and mercury, and it just light bulbs went off, and we met, and he talked for an hour, and he had so much information. It was immediate. He said, "Can you show up next week and help me film this interview?" And I said, "Absolutely." And that was the beginning of our working relationship, and it's been 7.5 years.
Well, you're getting a lot of good and interesting press about this film. You've been traveling the country, both you and Eric, along with some pretty big heavy hitters. You've been having a Kennedy speaking at some of your different films. Tell us about that relationship and what you guys have been doing.
Well, Dan Burton saw this film at Autism One. I think it was about 2 years ago. And Dan Burton was a congressman. He's in the film, and he said to us immediately, "You need to show this to Robert F. Kennedy Jr." So we ended up showing it to him several months later. And the reason why he said that is because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was working on Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak. So we had very compatible projects that we were working on. His book is a compilation of hundreds of studies that link thimerosal to neurological damage. So it just made sense for us to work together because we have the film, he has the book, backstep. And so that's how that working relationship started. And now he is not traveling the country with us. We're in an RV, and Eric and I and 2 interns are traveling the country, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. meets up with us at some of these larger events and speaks. And he's also now traveling the country to speak to legislators who are voting on these bills that are popping up all over the country right now that are around mandating vaccines or restricting exemptions.
Yeah, I find it interesting that there are a lot of people who would say to you, as you were, I'm sure, as you were working on this film, what's the big deal? They've taken the thimerosal out of the vaccines, so why are you still talking about this? So first I want you to address that, and then we'll talk about the course of events that have happened in the last couple of months, which has really put some steam behind why I think this film is so important. So what do you say to the people who say, no, the thimerosal is completely out of the vaccines? We've all been hearing that.
Right, and in 1999, the American Academy of Pediatrics did a good thing by suggesting that thimerosal be removed. And it was removed from the childhood schedule, but there was backstock that is dated through 2003 that was used. And then in 2004, they introduced the flu vaccine, which has 25 micrograms of thimerosal. So they introduced it on the childhood schedule, but also for pregnant mothers. And that is the worst time to get exposure is prenatally. They are basically little sponges for the toxins that are in the mom's body. And so when the mom is getting that 25 micrograms of mercury, most of that is going right to the child at a very, very vulnerable time where they can't excrete toxins.
And then
people do, yes.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah, people think it's been taken out, but that's a fallacy.
Yeah, it's important. I feel like knowledge is power, and it's important for everyone to get educated and understand exactly what's happening. And your film really seeks to educate. I want to quote something that was said in the Thinking Moms Revolution review of your film, lest anyone be confused. It says that your film, and I'm going to pick up in the middle of a quote here, without being overwhelming, militant, or pushy, Trace Amounts raises a frightening amount of uncertainty about institutions that most people hold in high regard, as have previous documentaries, but it manages to soften the blow of this impact by mostly focusing on one vaccine component, thereby allowing the controversy over mercury to act as a microcosm of the greater issues at hand. It also leaves viewers with more questions questions than answers, which is actually for the best, because theoretically, people will then be motivated to do their own extensive research and understand that there are no easy answers to be found. There is no right or wrong to be found in trace amounts, only a call to study this further for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Do you feel like that's an apt description of your film?
Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful paragraph. This is about informed consent, and this is about education. We focus on mercury because that's Eric's injury. It's also the most found in the vaccines, and it's the science that we have. We didn't look into anything else other than the synergistic toxicity between aluminum and mercury, which is much more toxic when they're combined. I think this film is a study in being aware as a consumer and being aware as a citizen. And
Shiloh, we're losing you a little bit. If you can move closer to a window, where you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Is this better?
That's much better.
All right. Where did you lose me?
Well, it was starting to break up. So go back significantly.
Okay. This is basically, I think one of the strong themes in this film is informed consent and research science. And I hope that it does inspire people to not be passive about their health care and to do the appropriate research and to read the science and to not just trust the CDC to hand down this schedule and blindly follow it. Because what you find out when you watch Trace Amounts, that there are some cover-ups and there's some corruption at the higher levels of the CDC. And they're not necessarily in the best position to be making these choices for us right now.
Well, and certainly when you started making this film, there was one set of circumstances. The CDC whistleblower, that information had not happened. And of course, we've had a more recent discussion about vaccines and who should be getting vaccines because of some cases of measles. I'm sure it's been a little bit of a whirlwind that you guys weren't necessarily counting on, but it really drives the discussion. As you were saying, you're going to these states and talking about new legislation where people are proposing in different states a variety of different laws that would take away a person's right to be exempt. And so I know that your schedule has become much more complicated and much busier because of that. What kinds of things are you finding out there on the road as you're touring the country about these exemption laws?
I'm not as entrenched in the exact laws. I know in Austin right now, they have 9 to 10 bills that restrict their exemptions. One of them is involves juvenile delinquents. You can be a 14-year-old and be in a juvenile delinquent hall and be asked if you would like to get vaccines, and then you have a 14-year-old making health decisions for themselves that are already in a compromised position because they've done something to get themselves there by not making good choices, and the parents are not involved in that choice, and that's a really scary thing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the sort of strange things that that Texas is facing right now. The capital's in Austin. And there's just lots of restrictions happening all over the country, or proposed restrictions happening that would limit parents' ability to make decisions. And it's scary for parents that do have an injured child, watch their child decline after a flu shot or a vaccine that they received, and then feel that they may be helpless in the future to avoid that for their younger child. And I just see a lot of passionate people all over this country who care a lot, are highly educated, who read the science, and don't want to be put in this position.
Yeah, it's, there's an old Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times. And I've been saying recently, we certainly live in interesting times, don't we? It is interesting how a few cases of measles, which is not something to be taken lightly, but a few cases of measles has created such an uproar and what I can only describe as a witch hunt of trying to identify ways that they can coerce people into doing different things that then perhaps they need to medically, or then perhaps they need to do because of religious or personal reasons. We see on the news on a regular basis that there are children that with different types of cancer and different types of immune issues that they're showing and saying these children cannot get vaccinated. And it always raises the question for me, why, if we accept that, do we not accept that there may be other children with immune issues that also should not get these shots? And maybe if we all put our energy to identifying who those children are and what in the shots is there that is preventing them from being able to take the shot safely, maybe we would get so much further.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're in a sad state where we can't even open the conversation of talking about vaccines without being called anti-vaccine and just being shut down. We should be able to have a higher level conversation about all of this. This is America. I think it's just really sad where we've ended up with this.
Absolutely.
And I desperately hope it changes, and I hope that trace amounts has the ability, if it's seen by enough people, to open up this conversation. Let's look at the science. Let's go to the science. I can't say that enough.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how people can see this film. You know, you've been having premieres in different places around the country, and I know that you've got a bunch of screenings that are coming up, but you've got something really wonderful that's starting next week. So tell our viewers about that.
Well, on April 2nd, we are launching digitally, and the film will be available through traceamounts.com to either rent or digital download, or you can purchase DVDs. So that's really exciting. We are releasing on World Autism Awareness Day, and hope that people can honor their loved ones and people, children that have been injured by thimerosal vaccines by watching this, educating themselves, and empowering themselves to have these conversations with, more science to back it up. So that's really exciting. And we are traveling the country using the Theatrical On Demand Gather, and we will be having a screening here in New York City on April 2nd as well at Union Square Station, and we'll be in Philadelphia tomorrow night.
And you've got dates coming up in Baltimore, Annapolis, West Newton, Massachusetts, Boston, West Hartford, a lot of different dates coming up. Now, if people want to get more information about the film, about renting it or attending a screening, can we send them to traceamounts.com? Is that the best place to go?
Absolutely. That is the best resource, traceamounts.com. Our trailer is there. You can watch that. We also have lots of great little videos that are about 1 minute long that you can post on your Facebook page, like the ethyl versus methyl. Burbacher's study is there in a lovely animated sequence. So there's lots of resources there to educate yourself, to educate others, and to go and purchase the film to watch.
And again, information is power, and educating yourself about this so that you can make an informed decision. I think that's all really anybody can ask for. Make informed decisions that are right for you and your family. Shiloh, we thank you so much. Please give our best to Eric. We know that he is busy and on the road today, and we're sorry that he wasn't able to join us. But please give him our best, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens with this film.
I will give him your best. He's in Austin, Texas, showing the film to a bunch of the legislators today. So thank you so much. I will pass on that information. And thank you, Shannon, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're on a busy schedule as well. But again, traceamounts.com. Thank you, Shiloh.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And you can check this film out. And again, you can rent it for yourself by going to traceamounts.com. You can pre-rent it for April 2nd, starting now. All right, stick with us. We're going to take a short break and be back with more Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy after these messages.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about step number 1, accept and embrace this challenge. Now we're moving on to step number 2, educate yourself. After my son Wyatt was diagnosed, I put up a sign over my home office that said Autism Central. I went to school in my home office every night after my husband and Wyatt had gone to bed because I was determined to learn everything there was about autism. That's because knowledge is power. Visit all the autism websites you can, read all the books you can, learn about all the organizations that are out there that offer free guides to help you. Some of them even offer mentors to help guide you. Find out about local support services. Find out about what educational services your child is entitled to. Get to every autism conference and seminar you can. I'll never forget the first autism conference that I went to. The first speaker was a beautiful, brilliant woman named Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet. She spoke about a therapy called Applied Behavioral Analysis, or ABA. She told about how it could improve the life of children with autism and in some cases recover them. Now, despite the fact that Wyatt had been diagnosed for over a year, nobody had told me about this therapy. I remember calling my husband on the cell phone and saying, "Honey, I met the woman who is going to help improve Wyatt's life." And I'm happy to say that 8 years later, that's true. Are you feeling a little overwhelmed by all the information that's out there? Well, you're not alone. But try different approaches for your child. Trust your gut. Just 40 short years ago, mothers were told if their child had autism that they would have to be institutionalized, and in some cases they were actually blamed for their child's autism for failing to bond with the child. That was called refrigerator mother syndrome. Well, thank goodness times have changed. So until next time, learn everything you can about autism and keep the faith.
Keep the faith. Okay, so onward and upward. So, Shannon,
Yes.
the run is this week,
Yes,
and the Active Day for Military Families. And I just have to say, I've gotten recently some letters from military families that have received grants from Active Day that have really touched my heart to such a deep level. And they've come at the best times, just at that moment when you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm swimming upstream, I'm working so hard, this event's so huge to put on. But I love the awareness that it gives to the military families. And a lot of people say, why military families? Because it's just so much tougher. I don't know if you saw American Sniper. I mean, that's sort of an extreme version. But imagine coming home with post-traumatic stress disorder to a house of a child with autism, possibly several, and the stress of that, it's overwhelming. And we just need to do everything we can for our military families. And the main thing they want is for us to take care of their children with special needs. They want their families taken care of. So
While they're out there protecting all of
us. So I think that's a pretty good reason why.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to show a video from last year's run so you can see how much fun it is. And we still need people to donate. So or to go on our site and you can support a team. Wyatt's Warriors is in second place, my team.
Wow.
And
I'm sucking dust in the back.
But you're
there.
You're there, and Christian O'Connor, our board member's son, is like almost at $5,000 in fundraising. Amazing, yeah. So we're going to take a look, and we'll come back. Jem, what?
I was just going to say, so our teams are Wyatt's Warriors and Jem's Awesome Rama team.
Right.
So
you can donate to those, and $5 helps. Come on, every little, just one drop is all we need to just get it going. Okay,
Absolutely.
So we'll take a look at the video.
Well, today is the One Hope Act Today for military families 10K and 5K run, walk, and family fun festival.
Thanks for coming out to support this awesome cause.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more people involved, more people to be aware of autism as a disorder, so that they can be more involved in this effort to help people find resources.
Pull that belly button in, get a nice balance there.
This is an incredible event. I'm very passionate about it. Autism is affecting so many kids across the United States, and I also support our military.
1, 2, 3, 4.
My name's Gunnery Sergeant Sean Tajma. I work with the School of Infantry West. I'm currently running with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. I personally involved with this because my son Jacob has autism. I just want to say thanks to Act Today for what they're doing to help my family and other military families with autism.
Here we go, let's hear it for the 2nd Light Infantry.
Some of the main sponsors here, of course, One Hope Wine is the title sponsor.
What we do is we donate 50% of our profits back to different partner charities, one of them being Act Today that does a fantastic job.
Act Today is very dear to my heart because when my husband was deployed, they were there when we didn't know how we were going to make things happen. They give so much to the military family, and it comes at a time when you just don't know how you're going to make ends meet. So to me, it's more than just an event, and it's more than just a grant. It's a gift.
All right, you guys, have we gone over the rules?
Thank you all to the teams, to the individuals that donated to this fantastic cause out here again this year. The event got larger.
People ask me why military families with autism, why does Act Today have that as a special program? I'll tell you why. Because our military families should not have to fight two battles. One, to protect our country, and another, to get services for their children. They move so often. Every time they move, they have to start again. We owe it to them. And it just was a tremendous success. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking part in it.
Check this out, Marine. See all these wonderful people? All you gotta do next year, Marine, Devil Dog, 2 for 100, sign up with me, staff sergeant email, and I'm gonna take you out here, do a little 5K, little PT early in the morning. After that, you're gonna have the time of your life. After that, I might even be able to get you a letter of appreciation, maybe a little libo time. How's that sound?
Sign up for next year because this is an event that comes on and on. It's a win-win situation here.
Does that look like fun or what?
It's so much fun. It's a wonderful event. Even if you're not going to walk, you can sign up to be a virtual walker.
You don't have to do a 10K, 5K.
And my child's going to do the 5K, but I think it's going to be a walking 5K.
Well, I'll walk it with him. Yeah, I'm not. My running days, my knees are shot.
Can I bring a bicycle and ride alongside him? They're not going to allow that, are they?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. So anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. We still have a lot of room for other runners.
And it's fun. If you're in the area, you need
just
to
come by.
Participate. It's a wonderful party.
Right. We have at least 35 vendors at our resource fair. We have a band. We have a wine and beer tent with One Hope Wine. One Hope is our presenting sponsor for this.
And they are lovely people.
They're incredible.
Can I just say how much One Hope Wine has supported our community and been truly lovely.
They
Anytime
really
I've been to an event where they've been really remarkable.
Yeah, well, it's social enterprise. You know, they believe you can be successful while doing good. It gives back to the community. So they actually have a label that benefits Act Today, and then they actually have another label for wounded warriors. They have another label for breast cancer and another label for the environment. These guys are really on top of it.
They have elevated drinking wine to something that's socially responsible.
That's correct.
In many different ways.
That's correct. So the wine and beer tent is always great. Always a lot of cute Marines over there if you're a single woman looking to hook up. And yeah, it's
there
just
is
so
some
great.
eye candy. We do need to say that.
There
eye
is.
candy.
There is eye candy. So please, you can go to www.acttodayformilitaryfamilies.Conterra.org, and you can find out how to support Jem, Wyatt, Card has several teams.
Or start your own team.
Or start your own team, or just, make a donation. Or if you're in the Southern California area in San Diego, come out this weekend. Festivities start around 7 for the first run, I think the 10K. Then we have the 5K, then we have the 1 mile fun run, then we have the festival, we have the resource fair, we have the food, the wine and beer, everything.
Is there an Easter egg thing this year? This year it's not right before Easter. So.
We're not doing Easter egg hunt this year, but we do have a kids zone that we have card therapists and face painting and bouncy houses, and you got to come. It's
stuff
great.
to do, and it's a beautiful place.
Beautiful, right there on the bay at SeaWorld. Yeah,
truly remarkable. So show some support, even if it's $1 that you donate, it's $5 that you donate.
Our goal is
makes a difference.
100,000. We're at 78,000. We've got 3 days to go here.
It can happen.
4 days. It can happen. It can happen.
All right. So we're going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and answer a question that somebody had written in for us. So stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back. We have a question that we've been meaning to get to that we had sent in for us by a viewer. They said, "Hi, ladies, and thank you for your awesome show."
Oh, thank you for watching.
They go on to say, "You guys are the best. We feel the same way about you."
Thank you.
When do you feel your children's language improved and really took off and clicked for them? And thanks for your time.
That's a very interesting question for me, because when I look back, Wyatt's loss of language was, I in some ways I think it happened rather rapidly, but I couldn't grasp it because you keep thinking they're where they were, and then he started to regress further. And then I realized he was down to about 1 to 2 word utterances at around 2.5, 3. And when I have to say that at age 4, when I put him on gluten-free, casein-free diet, he started speaking 3-word sentences around that time. And then he started ABA at 4 3/4. We got a late start, and the language started to escalate then. I would say between ages 3 and 5, and that was because of, to me, what I could relate it to was the diet and the ABA.
Yeah.
What about you?
For Jem, it's, we're still growing language at this point.
So are we.
And,
social, reciprocal language and learning how to carry on conversations.
And it really was, a lot the same for us in terms of there was the regression. And I always say that it was like somebody was coming in the middle of the night and stealing pieces of my child. Because the one sentence I remember is that when he was just a chubby little elf, he'd come into the one room and he would make a little gesture and he'd say, "Mama, what doing?" And then over time he would come in and say, "Mama, doing." And I used to think, what happened to the what? Where did that go? Did it disintegrate into, it just went away?
Right.
And then it became, Mama. And then the gesture went away. Then he would come in and walk into the corner and go around and around in a circle. And then eventually he never came into the room and wouldn't respond to his name.
Right.
And we lost virtually all language. Occasionally he would say one word, but it wasn't purposeful. Like he might go,
Wyatt's wasn't either.
Ba, 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 but it didn't mean anything.
Right.
So, and we saw a jump in language, acquiring language when we did the GFCF diet too. But in terms of him getting to conversation and getting back and forth, I really feel like that didn't come till significantly later. I think that was more like 5.5, 6.
Oh yeah. So when you're talking about social conversation, definitely not until, for Wyatt, 5, 6, 7, 8, and he's 13 now, and we're working on that now still.
And I still look at Jem, and I'm looking really closely with a magnifying glass always as a mother, and going, was that appropriate? Was that not? So I will sometimes forget how well that he's doing. And if you haven't seen, I did an interview with Jem. He was on the show for the first time like a week ago.
Oh, really?
Yes. So you can watch that and see what it's like having a conversation with him, and you'll see that I talk much more than he does. Like all interviews,
right?
That I do, but he's very conversant back and forth, but he'll stumble sometimes.
Yeah.
Or he'll say something and the syntax is interesting. He'll put it in a way that it sounds to me like somebody that English is their second or third language. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he still has a hard time conversing, but I do see with him that when we give him the methyl B12 shots, there is a significant jump in
That's
language.
very interesting to me, because we used to do glutathione and methyl B12 infusions, but that's been years. Wyatt is a scripter, and he's also he has a lot of verbal stereotypy. So he can be talking, and then there'll be some nonsensical and some scripting going on, and you might not even be aware it's scripting.
Right.
Like he'll say, do steam trains have engines?
Right, and I think that's him asking.
Yeah, and it's a script. And so the average person wouldn't know that.
Right.
So it's kind of tough, because I'll have to say to somebody like, like give him a sign, don't answer that, because I know it's a scripting thing.
Right.
And he has a lot of those issues that you don't have with Jem in terms of the stereotypy and the scripting.
Yeah.
So that's something we have to work on. But I know there's ways to shape that into more, purposeful conversation.
Yeah.
And we've never done, I did speech therapy with him when he was very young, at age 2, because nobody would say the A word, and nobody would tell me they thought he was on the spectrum. They said, well, get him to speech therapy. And so I thank God that I had him in speech therapy before he was diagnosed with autism, because at least I think it kept him going somewhat.
Yeah.
But I am interested in some of this social thinking speech that, it's on the list of the 10,000 things to do.
Yes, the list that we all have somewhere written on the refrigerator in our minds, of what's next.
Yeah.
But I will say this, that when I never have difficulty understanding what Wyatt is saying.
No, he's got very
meaning.
clear language, very clear pronunciation, articulation.
Is wonderful.
Right.
And I understand exactly, in the syntax, the way he puts the sentence together. It is so interesting how autism can be so different, and two people close in age, because I think it's very frequent for Jem that he'll say something and people are like, what's he talking about? I don't know. He'll take something out of context, or he'll just put the verb in a place where you wouldn't normally hear it in the sentence, and people go, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then he has to take a breath and then find a different way of verbalizing it to them.
It's frustrating, but when I get frustrated, I so try to be in gratitude and say, my child is speaking.
Yes.
My child is talking.
Yes.
When I get grants requests, and so many of the children nonverbal, up until, and may never be verbal.
Yes.
And, thank God we've discovered how brilliant and capable some of our kids are that are nonverbal by the fact that we have assistive technology that can help them express. But I just think, oh my gosh, thank God I can hear my son say, I love you.
Absolutely. Is that not the gift?
That was one of the greatest gifts ever, was when he first said that.
Absolutely.
So I try not to complain.
Well, and I will sometimes say to Jem, if he gets frustrated, if I didn't understand him and he gets frustrated, he's like, well, never mind. And I always say to him, oh, no. We all work too hard. You work too hard. Too many people work too hard to give you the voice that you have. So let's take a second and say what you want to say.
That's great.
But in any case, we're almost out of time today, so I want to take a little bit of time to talk about what's happening the rest of this week and then what's happening next week, because we have an amazing show next week. But so far, for this week, tomorrow, we want to remind you that Dr. Adele Nadowski will be here in the morning, and in particular, we're going to be talking about the verbal operants, all the different ways that we help to foster language, what the therapists call them. We talked about manding already this week, but we're going to talk about things that you probably have never heard of before, intraverbals, and how if we understand what this is, that we can help our kids to be more conversant, to get that language. There's a whole list of verbal operants, and it helps you to learn how to foster that language. It's really very fascinating, and she's a great person to speak on it. Then also tomorrow, we have some people that are going to be joining us from Autism Speaks, talking about the LA Walk Now for Autism. Jennifer Jones is going to be here with us. We're very excited to have her here. And then after the show tomorrow, normally we're done at noon and that's it for the week. But if you hang around, there's going to be just a half an hour where we'll be replaying old shows. But then at 12:30 tomorrow, for the first time, you're going to see a new segment that's happening once a month with Lisa Ackerman. It's called Talking with Taka. Amazing organization, and if you love the Taka Facts on this show, then you will love this show. Lisa tomorrow is going to be talking with you about folks who are newly diagnosed and giving you a roadmap to success, and then also she's going to tell you how to supercharge your Autism Action Month. April's coming up, and she's got a very special campaign that she's doing. So that will be Talking with Taka tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, next week, we have an amazing Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy for you. Our fabulous, we had already mentioned before that we were going to have Joanne Lara, amazing Spitfire. I think that's the only word I can think of. She is a firecracker. Got a really important event coming
Autism
up.
Movement Therapy, Joanne Laura, who is the founder and president of that. And she is involved with a musical celebration honoring Dr. Temple Grandin and friends. And
May 20th.
Yes, and which is going to be a huge event.
And she's bringing a very special guest.
She is. James Durbin, who I think almost everybody knows. James, he was the American Idol in season
so inspirational.
10. Yeah, and James, you know, so many people know him from his music. And he's involved with this event, and we're so excited to have him on the show.
I have said this before, but he is my son's Lieutenant Uhura. And if you don't understand that reference, you have to tune in next week so I can tell you why James Durbin is my son's Lieutenant Uhura. But then also on that show, we're going to have Areva Martin.
Okay.
So powerhouse week.
Special Needs Network,
so,
Areva Martin, about some legislation and a new
task force.
A new task force she's put together.
Yes, very important to help our part of our community that's very underserved.
Right.
So truly amazing.
Yeah. So please support the run if you can. I'll put that plug in one more time. I can't. Are we out of time yet? Is it?
We got a minute and a half. We have time.
Okay, we have time. Well, we have plenty to talk about. What else do you want to talk about?
I definitely want to tell people that it's not too late to sign up for the run and to do that.
Yeah.
Also want to let people know that we mentioned it in the last hour that our studio is going to be moving. So we're going to be giving you some updates next week and the week after, showing you some before and after as we move. Make sure that you're watching on our Facebook to see as things unfold. We're going to have pictures of the run on our Facebook. You check out our Instagram. And did you know that you can get our podcast now on Stitcher?
I did not.
And you can also be getting the podcast.
I don't even know what Stitcher is.
I'll tell you all about it later.
Okay.
And make sure that you're downloading our free app that you can get either on Google Play or on the Apple Store. That's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It's free, and you can be watching all of our episodes and our short highlight clips on your phone.
That's great.
Your mobile. So now on iTunes, Roku, and Stitcher, and I will explain to Nancy what Stitcher is.
Okay,
later.
good. There's too many of these things now.
It's exciting.
They keep proliferating now.
There's something for everybody, and we love that. All right, so don't forget tomorrow, Dr. Adele Nadowski, we're learning about the verbal operants.
And next week on the show, James Durbin with Joanne Laura.
So
Temple Grandin and friends. Yeah.
And Areva Martin as well.
Okay.
We're out of time, but until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.